Well, good morning. I'm Steve Aicinena. I worked at UTPB for 33 years in a number of capacities. I came here to be a professor, only a professor. When I worked on my doctorate, I was a graduate assistant for the volleyball team at Northern Colorado. And at that time, I decided that once all was said and done, it would probably be best for my family and myself to just be an academic. So when I came to UTPB, that's what I did. And that's what brought me here. People a lot of times have asked me, how did you end up in Odessa? Odessa was about the right size. The university gave me a lot of opportunities and freedoms as a professor to do the type of research that I wanted to do and to teach classes that I trained in. My goal was really to work with people who wanted to be teachers and coaches. I was a high school teacher and coach for 7 years before I went to work on my doctorate. So I thought the experience in my academic training and perhaps my eccentricities would be good for people who wanted to do that. That's why I came. Shortly after I received tenure, the university transitioned from a 2-year institution to a 4-year institution. And the idea when UTPB was formed was for students to take their first 2 years of college at a junior college and then transfer to a 4-year institution. There were a couple of UT institutions that had the same foundation. But we didn't get a whole lot of students here. I remember my very first class, I had 5 students in it, my first undergraduate class. And I kind of wondered how they paid me. I think the state wondered the same thing. So they said, we need to think about going 4-year. The community also wanted to have a 4-year institution. So over a number of years, people worked really hard to get UTPB to become a 4-year institution. And the idea was that the kids would start coming, but they didn't. And in reflecting on why students didn't come to UTPB to a very high degree, or at least the degree that we had hoped for, was that there was a lack of student life. A committee was formed to look at whether or not it might be a good idea to add athletics here at UTPB. Because of my background, I was asked to serve on that committee. And the committee decided that, yeah, it'd be a great idea because if you have it, they may come. So we set about starting in 1994, building an athletic program. Started with 2 sports that nobody else around here had. Volleyball was one. So none of the junior colleges had volleyball in the Permian Basin area. So I didn't want to step on any toes. Plus I was a volleyball coach. So I said, well, that's cool. I'll coach the volleyball team. I won't charge the school anything. It'll be a lot of fun and we'll get that started. And then the other thing we started was a soccer team. Again, nobody had soccer in the area. From that, the following year, in 1995, we joined the NAIA, and that began really the volleyball did, because I had to schedule in 93, recruit people in 93, and then play and recruit in 94, 95. So in 1995, we joined the NAIA, which is a smaller intercollegiate athletic program. Sorry, you can edit this part out. But it's a smaller national collegiate athletic association. And you could join that with very few sports. One, UTPB used to have a tennis team. Before I came, they had a very successful NAIA tennis team. It was the only sport that they had at the collegiate level. And they did away with it in 1997, 98 because it was very expensive. And I wasn't involved in that, don't have a whole lot of insight, but they dropped the program. So for that period of years, we just really didn't have anything. After joining the NAIA and playing that for a few years, we transitioned to become a NCAA member institution. And during all that time, I continued to serve as a professor and do research and service for the institution. I'll probably say this in response to one of the other questions that you have, and you can edit that out. But I always wanted to serve whatever organization or institution that I work for. It was very important to me. So I was happy to be a part of it. I was happy to be involved in building a program. I have no regrets about that whatsoever. But one thing that I would say is that being sacrificial in terms of your time and efforts sometimes is called for to create something. And I was glad that I was able to be involved in establishing this program. At the end, we had 16 intercollegiate sports, so it's a lot of sports and a whole lot of kids that wouldn't have been here otherwise. And building it required the involvement of a lot of people, student athletes who chose to come here, who committed to be here, coaches who in the beginning were horribly underpaid. Our first hired soccer coach received $2,000. I coached for free for most of my career, and there was a lot of sacrifice on the part of a lot of people. And the other thing I would say in regards to building a program, that it's not easy. It takes time, and my advice to anybody that would do something similar is to always do the best you can. And you can look around you and look at what people have that you don't, and use that as an excuse not to be successful. Make the most of what you have, and you'll be successful to the degree that you possibly can be. And for that, you can never be unhappy.
What does it mean to you to be inducted into the Hall of Fame?
So the first thing I'd say is when I got the call, that was nice. I think that's a question that'll be later. I felt gratitude. The other thing I would say that I felt was embarrassment. The first time I saw somebody outside of my home that said congratulations on this achievement, my immediate response was to feel embarrassed. My face turned red, and you know how it is when you feel embarrassed. And I thanked him for congratulating me. I know people have called me a lot of things over the years, some of them not too nice, but I've always felt a need to maintain humility and a sense of my place and importance. I certainly knew that someday I would not work in athletics and somebody would come along and replace me. And that's a realization that I had very early in the process. So understanding that there are others who are better, there are people who will replace you, and someday you're going to be gone, helps to maintain a sense of humility, which I think is important for all of us. So that's why the embarrassment came out, if that makes sense at all.
How did you feel when you first got the call you're being inducted? Did you ever think this would happen?
To be really honest about it, I understood that I was doing something that nobody had ever done here before. I mean, because nobody had done that. So I figured maybe sometime in the future that might happen. On the other hand, I would like to really make sure you understand that it wasn't something that I thought about as I was going through the process of building and administering at all. I really and truly did that for the betterment of UTPB and our students. Bettering UTPB by adding a dimension that we didn't have for student life. Helping UTPB to grow. Helping UTPB to become more widely known, even in the Permian Basin. It was really interesting to try to recruit people in the early years because nobody knew what UTPB was. They'd say, who are you and where are you? And I would even meet people in the Permian Basin that didn't know where UTPB was. So that was something that to me was kind of odd. It struck me as being odd. And it was something that I thought athletics would help to address in at least some small way. And I think that it really has. So the more things that we do have to offer as an institution, the more widely known the institution becomes. So I always felt athletics was something that would help that to happen. And that's one of the reasons why I was wholeheartedly interested in serving as an administrator.
When you look back on your career, what moments stand out the most?
As an administrator, one of the things that stood out absolutely the very, very most was caused by a poll that we gave to our students and our athletes as we considered transitioning from the NAIA to NCAA Division II. So some of the questions included, do you think it would be a good idea? And there was a place for comments. And one of our student athletes, they didn't sign them, but I don't know if it was because of detective work or whatever. Maybe the person saw me and struck up a conversation. I don't really know. But the person wrote down in the comments, quote, I'm paraphrasing, it's not a quote, it would be the dumbest thing ever to go into the NCAA, period. There's no way that UTPB could ever become competitive, period. And when I read that, the first thing I questioned was, how good of an athlete is that young man or that young woman if they don't look at challenges as being something that are important? Certainly we had done a whole lot of research before making the decision to even reach out to students to see what they thought about it. And we thought that overall it would be a good idea. Specifically, if I was recruiting for volleyball, and certainly the other coaches that worked here, kids will ask, what division are you? And so we would say, well, we're not in the NCAA. We don't really have a division. We're in an organization called the NAIA. And really and truly, the better NAIA teams are very equivalent to very good NCAA Division II teams. So that's where we're playing. I always found that to be off-putting. I didn't like to say it to the kids. It was the truth, and I don't mind sharing the truth. But a lot of the kids, because they would associate the NCAA with high-level competition and quality, those were things that were really, really important to us at the time that we're thinking about making that transition. So in reflecting on what that young person said, it bothered me. And it also was a way for somebody who didn't have much information and didn't have a can-do spirit, if you want to look at that. And it bothered me. We did ultimately transition to NCAA Division II. And at the time, it was a 5-year process, which meant no playoffs, no possibility of playoffs for 5 years. I didn't like that, and that was a challenge. I said, there's got to be a way to do it faster than that. So I figured out how we might do that. And quite frankly, 2 years before we started that membership process, we started to follow their rules in terms of eligibility, recruiting, and everything else. And we had documentation to support that. So that's something that I thought was important, even as we considered it. If we're going to do it, we might as well start doing it early. So that early commitment actually paid off. And instead of being 5 years, we were a full member in 3 years, which that provided a whole lot of satisfaction to me. In terms of what the young man said in the questionnaire, you can never be competitive. The first year we were eligible for postseason play, the volleyball team won the conference championship and competed in the NCAA tournament. And I enjoy telling that story because there are a lot of people in the world that are going to tell you you can't do something or you shouldn't even try. And in this particular case, we tried because we made a reasoned decision, and it was right. The other thing I would tell you is, and so I don't want to just talk about the volleyball team in 2008. Right now our football team is in the top 10 of the nation. And that person who said it can never happen, you can never be successful here, was just plain out wrong. So if you have a dream of doing something, in whatever capacity you work in, make a reasoned decision, do your research, consult others, and if you believe it's the right thing to do for you or for your organization, then you need to get off your rear end and do it instead of sitting around throwing out negative vibes. So keep positive vibes. All right.
What accomplishments are you most proud of?
Well, I'm going to say as an administrator, we had a basketball team. When we were a member of the NCAA, that made it to the Sweet 16. They won the conference. Again, something that somebody would have said years before, that's never going to happen. And made it all the way to the Sweet 16. So I will say, from hiring Coach Newman, who was the coach at the time, talking with him about recruits, visiting with recruits when they came. A lot of the coaches would bring recruits by my office, and I was always happy to talk to them. Driving their team to games on occasion. You didn't know ADs drove buses, but I did. Sweeping the floors before some of the games. Going to the conference tournament, watching the people who traveled to support them, and then winning the conference championship. I was there to take pictures. So that's one of the things I did when I would go to games with people, driving them on the bus. I'd take pictures. I didn't drive that particular time. They took their own bus. But some of those pictures are in the halls of our gymnasium. So there's a picture of Coach Newman sitting by two of his athletes after they won. And that's one of my favorite UTPB pictures ever. Nobody asked me what to, but when I see that, it makes me happy. And it's a testament to the accomplishment that team made, and to have been a part of that in any way, shape, or form. I was sincerely thankful. And as far as it being a great accomplishment, it was a great accomplishment for those young men, that coach, and for our institution. To me, I felt a great deal of satisfaction is what I felt. And it was really awesome. And I've got two volleyball. I'm sorry, I couldn't pick one. So as a coach here, in 1999, we were hosting the conference tournament for the Red River Conference when we were in the NAIA. And in the semifinals of the tournament, we were going to play Houston Baptist University, who always beat us. And at the time, Houston Baptist was ranked in the top 20 of the NAIA, and UTPB had no scholarships. So not one of my players had a scholarship. They had 8. They had some really excellent players. So going into that match, I don't think too many people would have given us a chance to win. And I remember talking with the kids a lot about, obviously, how we wanted to approach the match and that kind of stuff. But one of the things I sincerely think was important to share with them is that you shouldn't go into this match thinking that you're going to lose, that you always have an opportunity if you compete, if you execute, if the game plan is good and you play together. And during that semifinal match, we beat them. And that should never, it was incredible. The stands were full. The people were going ape, as the match was going on. And that was one of the greatest accomplishments of really any of our teams over the years, I think. And I was so overwhelmed by how well the kids played, and how they competed, maintained themselves, supported each other, that I was emotional for at least 2 weeks after. Every time I thought about what they did, I'm not thinking about holding up a trophy, because quite frankly, I don't think too much about that stuff. You want to win, but you have people to coach and goals to achieve, and you do the best you can. You can't always win, but you can do your best. So I was emotional about that for weeks, and I even remember being at a picnic in San Angelo about a week and a half later, and I just thought about it, and I was overwhelmed. And so it's something that I don't know if anybody's ever experienced that before, but that was awesome. And then the second volleyball story was 2008. We were at St. Edwards. It was a conference match. We had two matches to go, St. Edwards and St. Mary's. And if we were going to win the conference championship, we had to beat St. Edwards. And in a pivotal match, we were down 29-22. At the time, we played to 30. It was still rally scoring. So what that meant was if we made one mistake in that rest of that set, that we'd lose the match. So that's a long ways to be down. But we didn't make one passing error, one hitting error, one serving error, one blocking error, no brain farts, nothing. And as we started chipping away and got closer and closer, you might imagine the pressure got greater and greater for the players, and the excitement level increased accordingly. But they did it. They ended up winning 31-29, and that was the single most amazing stretch, in an event that I ever was a part of. We beat St. Mary's. We beat St. Edwards that night, and then went on to beat St. Mary's the next day. But winning against St. Mary's wasn't the cool thing. It was the journey in that previous night's match.
How did your time at UTP shape you as a person?
In thinking about that, whoever you are today, whoever I am today, has been shaped by a lot of different people and a whole host of experiences. And other things that might have shaped who you are today are your education, your awareness of the world, the society that you live in, and a whole host of things. So if you look at a human being as being a product, and human beings as being thinking entities, then what I'm about to share would kind of make sense. So I played sports through high school. I played collegiate soccer. I played collegiate volleyball. One of our soccer teams was second in the nation. I got to play volleyball against UCLA, which was kind of cool. And might not mean to most of you guys, but that's neat. One of my soccer teams was second in the nation that I was on. Won conference championships, a conference championship as a graduate assistant, and as a coach. And what I would say is, whether I was playing Little League baseball, whether I was playing soccer, coaches are there. I think some coaches differ in why they're there, and the approaches that various coaches have to coaching differ. So even as I was playing, I remember being a little kid and saying, why doesn't the coach do this? Or why doesn't the coach do that? My parents didn't say those things because I was a free-range child. So I walked to practice and walked to a lot of my games and stuff like that. I played sports just because I wanted to. I loved competition and testing myself. So all of these people that you play for, at least in my experience, I would question why they did things, not to them, but I would reflect on it. And as I grew and played for more and more people and became more aware that I thought I wanted to be a teacher and I thought I might want to coach, then I started to think how I would have done something differently. I didn't talk with my teammates about that. Sometimes it's not good to talk to your teammates. It becomes a pity party, like, oh, why didn't I, whatever. But I remember playing in a football game, and we were dominating this other team on the ground. I wasn't a great football player, so this is not the purpose of this story. But I remember we were down on the 3-yard line, and all we did was run. Like, we hardly ever passed. So I think the coach said, hey, maybe we ought to throw a pass. Like, that might freak everybody out, because, you don't do that. And we tried 3 consecutive passing plays, and they were all incomplete, disasters. And we were going in the huddle, and the guys were saying, why in the world is coach doing that? Why aren't we running the ball? So in the huddle, there's about ready to be a mutiny, and somebody says, why don't we just do it anyway? And I said to myself, that's probably what we should do. I said, but I don't think that's what I just don't think that's really cool. And he tried one more pass play, so 4 and out, whatever. I think we tied the game. It was a miracle. But you reflect on those types of experiences and picture yourself being a coach, and how would you do that? So in terms of development, I think that was important as a coach. I didn't obviously hang around a lot of administrators, but I did study administration. And so when I was in a position to be an administrator, at least I had an idea of how I should go about it. But as far as individuals who influenced me greatly, they all influenced me. And every experience that I was able to have was either something that taught me a new aspect of coaching or teaching or administration, or reinforced things that I learned along the way.
Did you have a mentor or coach who especially inspired?
I've never been partial to hero worship. So I can't pick any one person who I could say I modeled my behavior after. My mom was 16 when I was born. I can't say it was my father because he was absent. My mom was important. She was a hardworking person and kind of told things how it was. So I won't share with you the things that she used to say, but other people are really like shocked, like, whoa, she said that kind of stuff. Anyway, but human beings are human beings. So rather than say I tried to model myself after somebody, it was that composite of what I thought was good and right and effective and true, and studied to try to make all that stuff fit. If you have a philosophy of life that jives well with your philosophy of sport or your philosophy of education, then you probably will be a more consistent individual and somebody that others can figure out, and they can know what to expect of you, because you don't deviate from one day to another day in terms of how you respond to stress, for example. So what I would say is, in reflecting on all of my experiences, my education, that all of those things contribute to who I was. So I can't say that one person was the answer. Sorry.
How do you hope people remember you and your time as a Falcon?
It's really gratifying to have somebody see me out there in the community, and I don't get outside my house too much. I stay inside my house a lot, and say, yeah, you were one of my professors. And because I could remember virtually all of them. The names are getting kind of fuzzy because I'm gonna be 70 next month, and I was here a long time. I've been retired for a few years, but I'm always thankful that when somebody says you had an impact on my career, or I enjoyed playing for you, or you impacted my life, those are the things that to me are most gratifying. The kids achieving something together, growing as individuals, those are the things that are most gratifying to me. But when all's said and done, I was just a guy. Someday I'll be, buried or ashes thrown somewhere. And who's going to really remember that? And I remember times when teams didn't get along and we were talking through it. And I remember starting one of those sessions with, I'm going to start this out by saying this. 20 years from now, none of you are going to remember what your record is. You might remember you won a conference tournament if that happens. But should you not win that, what you're going to really remember are the people who you played with and how they treated you. How did you treat others? So if there are conflicts going on right now, then I think everybody needs to look, including me, as to how they're interacting and how they're behaving to make things work a little bit better. But all in all, when all is said, I'm just a guy who wanted to do the best I could here at UTPB for the institution, for the students, for the student athletes in the program, and for the student athletes who played for me. And I really hope that I was able to do that.
What advice would you give to today's student athletes?
So I made a little list of a couple of things. And I would say the first one that I would share with you is to listen to what other people have to say and recommend. And that's really important. It doesn't mean that you have to agree with them, and it doesn't mean that you have to follow through with their recommendations. But I think any individual who's not willing at least to listen to an alternative perspective or an alternative way of doing something is cutting him or herself short. And so while working in athletics and at UTPB, that was something that I thought was important, and I think it's something that a lot of people would benefit from. Another thing that I would say is you can't always be the best, and I'm sure you've heard the second part of this before, but at least you can be the best person that you can be. And that's in terms of your behavior with others. You can be the best person that you can be. You might not be the best person in the world, but you can treat others to the best of your ability. You can compete to the best of your ability, or you can compete without giving everything that you can to prepare and to compete in the moment. Another thing that I think is important is to be generous with your time and with your fortune. People who don't wish to give any time, I think, are selfish. Obviously, there's a point at which you're giving so much that you can't give any more time. That's a different type of situation. But you should be able and willing to give time when you can. And giving your money, I know if you're a student athlete, you probably don't have a whole lot of money right now. So it seems kind of strange to say give your money, but if you're not willing to share what you make and what you have, then in a way I think that owns you. And that's not a good thing. Life's more than money and the stuff that you have. So I think that that's a really important thing. The rest of these are really quick. Keep learning. If you're stagnant in what you know, I will bet you $100 that the coaches that we have here, and I only have $100 because I give it away. Just kidding. That the coaches are still trying to learn new things. Basketball coaches, I'm sure, look at other offensive schemes that they might employ or defensive schemes that they might employ. Football coaches are scouting, figuring out how they're going to come up with a game plan. They see what other people have done on the film. They know what their kids can do, and then coming up with some happy way of attacking that opponent is something that's important. And you could say, well, that's just scouting, but you're learning about your opponent. That's an example of learning. Learn how to interact with people better. Go to coaching clinics and all that kind of stuff. So I think learning is important. I still learn. I'm still doing writing and research, even though I'm not paid to do that anymore. I enjoy it, and learning is important. As a photographer, I love photography, and I'm still learning more about photography and how I might do things differently as I'm working for people. So learning is important. Be honest. I will say that I was probably brutally honest, not to be ugly or mean, but the truth is the truth. And sometimes the truth hurts people. Whenever I'd share something with someone that I anticipated being painful, it always made me uncomfortable. But there are times that you have to have those conversations with people. I'm never hoping to be mean or harmful to them. But why is a kid not starting and another kid is? I remember a coach once telling me, well, you're not starting because this other person is faster than you. Now the truth is they were faster than me, but the other part of the truth is we never had a race. So how do you say, well, the other person's faster if you've never done anything where you can compare people? So it was really important to me to be objective, and that's really my next point. As a person, you should be objective. If you're objective, you're less likely to be hurt. You're less likely to hurt other people. If you're objective, you're more likely to make good decisions. So when I would sit people down before our first match, for example, I would say, well, I've been taking statistics on you for all of our preseason and all of the people in your position. And I'm going to share with you what position that you're in based upon this 2.5 weeks of practicing and statistics. And in decisions on who's going to start, it's going to be Jane instead of you, and here's why. Here are the statistics. Here's what is important in that position. And so now you're probably wondering, how am I ever going to get to start? Well, we will continue to take statistics. You'll be put in games when the opportunity arises, and you'll have to perform really well in that. And at some point, you're going to have to outperform this person at practice. So I'd even take, after preseason, I'd still continue to take statistics because you would hope people are going to develop. So making those objective decisions was something that I thought was really important. How I feel about Susie or Jane really shouldn't matter a whole lot. Stay positive. What good does it do to sit around and complain about anything? I never have understood that. Never will. So I learned here that you've got to remain positive. Don't care if we don't have much money. I don't care if I have to drive the bus. I might as well drive the bus with a smile on my face. And I think that attitude is important for anybody in life. I don't care if it's a marriage. People are married, and life is not always easy. But if both of you sit around thinking about things that you don't have, saying that things will never get better, there's nothing we can do to improve ourselves or our relationship, then I think that marriage is doomed. Why would it be any different than a team? If the whole team sits around and has the same type of attitude and they're not positive, then not a whole lot is going to be accomplished. Be hopeful. If you're positive, you can be hopeful. If you're hopeful, then you can keep working hard. If you keep working hard, you might be successful. Be humble. I've been very, very blessed to have some semblance of some abilities. And I don't understand why. I've never understood why my sisters were 180 degrees different than me in a bajillion ways. I don't understand how people who were around me could have negative attitudes. I don't know if I'm smarter than the next person. I'm only as smart as I am, however smart or dumb that might be. But it is really important that, at least to me, that I did the best I could with what I had. And my achievements in sport as a coach wouldn't have been possible without any of the kids or the few people who worked as assistant coaches for me, volunteer assistants, So nothing that I did at UTPB could have been done on my own, none of it. So I'm thankful, and understanding that helps to maintain a sense of humility. And as you go through life, seeking achievements, I really have very little to do with what I achieved. That's all I can tell you. Somebody's always going to be greater. Somebody's always going to be better. God's always going to be more important than me. I'm not in control. And understanding that isn't limiting what you're going to do, but it gives you a perspective of what your accomplishments really are, as good or small, large as they might be. Treat others only as you would want them to treat you. I would say I was very pleased. I coached youth sports, high school sports, junior high sports, college sports. And as a volleyball coach here at UTPB for 23 years, I think I raised my voice at a kid 5 times because I kept track. I never have felt like yelling at somebody was the way to behave. But that's me. Other people, if they want to yell, that's fine. But like I said, reflecting on my experiences in life and in sport, yelling at me just really didn't do any good. So I wanted to make sure that I coached and interacted with people in a way that I would want them to work and interact with me. And that's a good guideline, I think, in life for everybody. And then the last one is to thank God. Like I said, I had nothing to do with what my maximum potentials would be. They're set when you're born. I was never going to be 7 foot tall. I was never going to be a world-class sprinter. I was never going to be Einstein. And all those things are okay. Do the best with what you can. So be thankful. If you're thankful, it's a lot harder for you to sit around and complain. That's my dirty dozen, the list of the dozen.
What does being a part of this university's history mean to you? I'm a guy who came here to work and serve, and I did the best I could to do that. So to me, I'm thankful that I had the opportunity to work here. You know, whenever you hire somebody, whenever I hired a coach, you always hope that that coach is going to do a good job. I think that when I was hired as a faculty member here, that they took a risk on me. And I will tell you this, I've always been honest with people. So if somebody asked me a question, I would always give a truthful response. And I know that I was always a little bit different than a lot of people, but that's who I am. And when I say different, it's not in some ugly way. When I would go to athletic directors, meetings in Austin, I never wore a suit. I don't own a suit. I don't want to own a suit. So I'd be the only person in the room out of all the UT athletic directors not wearing a suit. And that's who I am, and that's how I'm going to be. And I'm not going to apologize for that. So in working here, I did things the very best that I could. And I'm appreciative of the people who put up with my eccentricities because they allowed me to function and hopefully for the betterment of UTPB. And I'm thankful for that opportunity and the trust people that gave me. That's really what I would say, sir.